What's up, peoples? So today got this Logitech. It's a C615 little webcam here that has some issues, and this is one that my kid was actually using for doing his online schoolwork at the moment. But unfortunately, it's got a problem, and so for a while now, I let him use my C922 Pro. So I kind of want that back because I do have a project with it that I want to do here on the bench, so I need to get this one back to him. Anyways, the problem is we can connect it to USB, and sometimes it'll come up and sometimes it doesn't. But let me show. Well, I mean, you can't see the screen or anything, but you should be able to hear it. So if I connect it here to a USB port, okay, it came up as a USB device not recognized. But if I kind of tweak around with it right here at this point, it might change, or not. Let me disconnect it real quick. Let me see if I kind of wiggle it around a bit. Okay, I've been messing around with it for a while. I cannot get it to work this time, but once in a while I was able to just kind of tweak the wire here a little bit and it would connect. Now it just keeps failing. So I have a feeling that the problem is that the wires inside here have probably gotten broken internally. And I mean, it has that like sort of strain relief thing right there, but I mean, it's still going to be able to like bend at like really sharp angles. Definitely not a fan of this type of strain relief. So we're gonna have to take it apart and probably cut this back a bit and see what we can do inside in order to be able to get it to reliably connect every time we plug it in. I've already sort of looked up how to take these apart, and it looks like these up here in the front are supposed to come off first. So, well, first of all, let me unplug it from the USB port. And let's go ahead and start by taking this part off. I'm gonna try to unstick it because apparently it's just double-sided. Taped on there, so that's peeling off fairly easily. There it goes. And yeah, we have the couple little screws over there we can remove, so let's go ahead and take the other side off. Just kind of the middle parts there for some reason like stuck harder than everything else. Alright, that's all 4 screws removed, and it feels kind of loose here. I'm not sure exactly which part comes off now. I think it might be the back. Let's see. I'm gonna pry a little bit right here. Yep, there it goes. Feels like it's got like some little catches or snaps or something around. Oh, okay, it's just the way it fits in there, but there it is. So if we open it up this way, there is a microphone connector up here in the front. Looks like I should just be able to... Oh, there's not enough space to pull it off right there, so I'm going to have to remove these 2 screws. There's 2 other screws right there just holding the board to the back part. Okay. Now I should be able to pull the board out, and there it comes. And that gives me enough room right there to be able to pull that microphone connector off. So I'm just going to undo that there so I don't break it. If I could actually pull it off. There we go. All right. And there it goes. Looks like I'm going to have to desolder that wire right there. That's the ground, and it's soldered directly to the board. So that's going to have to come off in order for me to free the rest of the cable here, because I don't really want to work on it with this thing plugged in here, because I'm going to probably be bending it around. I don't want to break it. So this part here just unplugs. So let's take this off really quick. I think the solder sucker should be hot enough now. Let's go ahead and try to pull this off. And that is a ground point, so it's there's a lot of copper there, so it's probably going to take a bit of heat before it'll finally start melting. Yeah, it's taking a lot of heat, but it's softening up. I can feel it, and once I notice it moving, I will go ahead and hit the button. Oh boy, that didn't do anything. Let's turn up the heat a little bit. There it goes. It's wiggling now. I think that should be hot enough. I can feel the board getting hot. And the tip is clogged. Dang it. This is why it's important to keep this thing clean. I guess it's been a while since I cleaned it. There's a big wad of solder right there, and I can see all the way through. You might be able to see there. You can see the bench through that little hole, but I think this is what was stopping it from being able to pull a good suction there. So, all right, new piece of cotton. All right, I think I was able to get a lot of that solder out of there, but it's one of these connectors that actually kind of spreads out after it goes into the hole. So even though it's loose, it's still giving me some problems. It's slowly wiggling out. There it is. So that's what I'm talking about there. And this is the part we're interested in here. So I'm going to pull some of this cable through the strain relief. And it actually looks like this may be bonded to the strain relief. It's more like it's glued a little bit, but if I just pull it back enough, I should be able to get this thing to loosen up. Okay, so I would just normally cut this off like right there and deal with it, but I want to see something. So I'm trying to be careful here when I remove it. And I'm trying to separate the jacket from the strain relief. So I'm going to just kind of like gently cut around it. Well, not quite how I wanted to, but I finally got this to separate from there. I guess I could have just like scored it along the back here and then pulled this off. But let's see if we can tell where the problem is. Should be somewhere in here because that's where it bends. Okay, and this cable has shielding around it. So it's going to be somewhere inside of this shielding most likely. Okay, looks like I'm wrong once again. So what I did here is I've got these two clips attached to the multimeter so that when they make contact, you can hear there's continuity. So what I did is I took this USB connector and I took turns connecting each one to each of the 4 pins here. So I get basically 0 resistance or 0 ohms when I hook these up like that. So what I did is I went to each one of the 4 wires and I did that, and I cannot get continuity to break like anywhere. And I've kind of like looked at the wires here up close and I don't see any breaks or anything that looks suspicious like anywhere along any of these wires. So I'm starting to suspect that maybe the connector that's supposed to go in there may have gotten like slightly pulled out, and that's why sometimes when I would wiggle it down here, it would like make and break contact between whatever pin on here was supposed to or was like not making proper contact with the other pin up here. So what I can do to kind of test that is I can put the wires back into this connector, plug it in, and see if it connects properly now, because I mean I've done nothing else other than just take it apart and disconnect the thing. The part that kind of sucks is that I already cut the ground off, so you can see I got this kind of like laying here on the side. It just made it easier to take the strain relief off of there, but if needed I can resolder this and I can get it back to looking pretty much stock again, so that's not a big deal. I'm just a little more frustrated that it may have been just a connector up here and nothing to do with the wires in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and repopulate this connector. I'll plug it back into the camera and I'll see what it does when it hooked up to the PC. Okay, I got the connector fully populated again, and I'm going to kind of pull this shielding here back a little bit just to prevent shorting something out on the camera board. Okay, that's how it goes. So that's connected. I'm just going to keep this shielding down here. It should still be grounded through the ground pin right here on the USB connector. So let me go ahead and plug it in, and let's see what we hear this time. If we get a the sound that it's supposed to make when a device connects properly, then we'll hear it. Let's see what happens. Here we go, and in. Nope, it failed again. Alright, I have no idea why it keeps making that sound like it's disconnecting or it's not connecting properly, but I have confirmed that it is showing up now. So if I plug it in down here, You should see it pop up here. There it is. So it is showing up. And if I go to the little camera application down here, we should be, I mean, I'm kind of just pointing it down at the bench here. So it is working. So I don't know why it's stuck making the disconnect sound. But I'm starting to think maybe that is what it was. So, because, I mean, I'm wiggling it around and it's not disconnecting anymore. Like, no matter where I do it. So, man. Well, I guess on the bright side, that will allow me to make the grounding here a little bit shorter, and I can kind of tuck these wires in inside the camera in there just a little bit more so that they can't get yanked out. Let me see if I kind of just wiggle this out a little bit, see if it'll disconnect. Oh, I mean, now I pull it all the way out, but yeah, it's having absolutely zero issues now that it's like plugged in properly. And I mean, I have to like pull it out quite a bit before it'll disconnect, but oh man, these things. In order to get this thing back together, I've cleaned out the hole on the little strain relief thing right here, and I am going to have to pull the connector housing off of the pins here so I can get it back on. And what I think I'm going to do is I will probably end up having to use a little bit of heat shrink and reattach this ground to it, but since this is going to be shorter, I will tuck the wires in kind of to the side. So first of all, let's get rid of some of these little rip cords here on the cable. I'm going to tidy up these shielding wires here a little bit. It's not the prettiest thing ever, but it should work. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of heat shrink up here that I can slide into place once I've soldered this onto here, and then I'm going to put another piece of heat shrink and bring it up to about here. That's going to cover all of this stuff up like that, and that should make it a little more tidier and less likely for something to short up against these grounds here. So I'm going to go get my heat shrink. Alright, I'm putting a little bit of flux on the end of this ground connector just to help me make the soldering process a little bit go a little bit smoother. I'm going to do the same to this side, except before I do that, I am going to slide the heat shrink that's going to cover everything, which is a slightly larger diameter than the cable itself. So I'm just going to slide that on first, and I already put the strain relief here so I don't forget about that, because I'm not going to be able to put that on after the fact, so better do it now. Alright, so now I can get this on to the jaws there. Put a little bit of flux on the tip of that. Yeah, okay. Alright, I'm going to bring these together just enough to overlap. Right there. Make sure that this wire is not going to touch anything. And the guy riding a go-kart around outside, you might hear that on the video. Oh boy, I almost forgot. I need to put this heat shrink over this part so that I can slide it into place once that's soldered. Now I'm going to get heat flux on the inside of that, so that means I got to clean that off. The biggest reason I cleaned off the flux from the wire here before I put the heat shrink on is because I don't want there to be flux on the inside of the heat shrink, because any uncooked flux that's going to be on there after the fact, like after I solder all this, might start corroding the wires, and I don't want that to happen. So I've slid the heat shrink on there. After I cleaned it off, I applied a little bit more flux, and so now I'm just going to briefly touch these two wires here together with the soldering iron and a little bit of solder and get them to stick together. I'm really hoping that the end of the small heat shrink there doesn't experience any shrinkage, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to pull it over that solder blob there. So I'm just going to actually try to heat this side here the most and get the solder to start flowing, and then maybe it'll flow onto the other wire there. So come on, fast. There we go. All right, and it still shrunk a little bit. Okay, well, it looks like it's just a tiny bit, so maybe I'll be able to cut it off with the scalpel and finish pulling it over there. So, but the solder joint there looks pretty good. Okay, so since I can't easily put another piece of heat shrink on this wire because that little tab there's going to stop me, what I can do is provide a little bit more protection to these wires, because I still have it's not big enough that I can't stick like another piece of heat shrink on here. So I got this little clear piece that I'm going to stick all the way down to there, where it would be normally rubbing on that, and that should help protect it a little bit more. And then I'll slide this other piece of heat shrink over the whole thing, and that should make this all pretty secure, where, I mean, vibrations are really probably not going to be an issue anymore. So we're going to go ahead and shrink that and continue reassembling the thing. Okay, so that looks much better. We'll be ready now to put the housing back onto these pins, and we should be able to reattach that now, and it should work. What I'll do for the strain relief here is a good way to kind of get it to hold is to put a little bit of super glue right where you want it to end up, and then just like pull this all the way down to, and then that's usually really secure. Like it attaches really well to both the wire jacket and to this strain relief material, so that should not be able to easily pull out. Okay, all four of those are back in. We can stick the ground into that hole there, plug this thing back in. Okay, before I solder this ground and before I completely reattach this strain relief here to the end, I'm going to test it one more time and make sure that it still connects, because I don't want to do all this, put it all back together and then find out it's not going to work. So I'm not going to bother recording the screen here. I'll just let you know if it pops up or not, or if it pops up with an error. No, still doing the disconnect sound, but it is showing up, so it's, yeah, that should be fine. Now, good thing is that the back of the board here has this piece of like plastic sheet, so that way there's a little bit of ground exposed right there, but it can't touch any of that, at least not easily. So it should be okay to kind of have it like around here on the side or something, because I'm not going to be able to get this strain relief over that part there. So it's going to go to like that point, and then I got to tuck all that in to the camera somehow, maybe kind of like that, because that's about where it was. So that right there should be okay. Time to hit that ground with the soldering iron, and then that part will be done. All right, I got it to fit. I had to kind of stuff the cable over to this side, and now it's actually touching down where it should be, and so I should be able to put the screws back on now. Now, one more test before completely putting it back together. And it came up good. All right, put the rest of the screws on. All right, it's all back together. No weird bulges or anything. It looks pretty good. I mean, if you hadn't seen the video, you wouldn't even know that I even touched the thing. The strain relief, that's fine. It looks okay. I thought it was kind of off to the side because of the pressure that's on it to kind of move, but it looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and put the side pieces back on, or the little trim on the front. Good as new. One final test here. We'll plug it in, and it should show up here, and there it is. Before, what it was doing is it was actually showing up down here, and it said like unable to enumerate device or something like that. So that's when I knew that it wasn't working, but as soon as it would pop up here, then I know it's working. So if I go to the camera application, we should see it, and yep, there it is, and there you guys are. So yep, working once again. Well, I'm happy about that, because that means that I can give this one back to my kid, and I can take my other one back and use it for what I wanted to use it for. So thanks guys for watching once again. I'll see you guys around the bench.